Now we come to chapter 17, and it talks about this woman called the great prostitute. In verses 1 to 3, it says, Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and said to me, Come, I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute, who is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality, and with the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers on earth have become drunk. And he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. So here is now focus on the judgment of the great prostitute. Now that the bowls have all been revealed and poured, one of the 7 angels comes to explain the specific judgment on the one called the great prostitute. And it says this great prostitute is seated on many waters. We already saw that many waters represents the many nations. In fact, in verse 15 of the same chapter here, 17, it says very specifically that the waters represent peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages of the earth. So this great prostitute will have influence over all the nations of the earth. And then it says the kings of the earth committed sexual immorality with her. The term prostitute and sexual immorality are used many times in the Bible to refer to how Israel, who should have been faithful to the one true God, instead they were going off and worshiping other idols. And so it's, in that sense, spiritual immorality. You can see this in many passages, including Judges 2:17, Jeremiah 3:6, Ezekiel 16, 30, 31, and 36, and then as well as Revelation 14, verse 8. And it says in verse 6 that the prostitute is drunk on the blood of the saints. So it's clear that the prostitute represents false religion, and getting drunk on the wine or blood of sexual immorality represents killing the saints who follow the true God. They're connected. And it says the kings and those who dwell on the earth, in this passage it says they willingly take part in this. They willingly follow this false religion and wicked idolatry. Then it says, He carried me away in the Spirit into a wilderness. John is carried away from where he is in the island of Patmos to this wilderness, and then later it describes this place he is as Babylon, which of course is located in a wilderness region. So the center of false religion during the tribulation appears to be in the location of ancient Babylon, which again is located in a wilderness region. It says a woman is sitting on a scarlet beast that has the 7 heads and 10 horns and the blasphemous names. So here you have the prostitute, which is false religion, being supported by, sitting on this image which we know is the beast or the Antichrist. So it appears that at the start of the tribulation, there will be both a worldwide government led by the Antichrist, as well as a worldwide false religion supported by the Antichrist and his kingdom. It's only then at the midpoint of the tribulation that the Antichrist will do away with false religion and replace it with another false religion, the worship only of himself. So there will be a false religion that he will support, but then he will gain so much influence and power that he will say, no, I am God, worship only me. And of course, he sets up his image in the temple. And you can see this, that he demands this worship in Daniel 9:27, Matthew 24:15, 2 Thessalonians 2:4, as well as Revelation 13:5 and 8. And this happens at the midpoint. Then we look at verses 4 through 6. It says, The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. And on her forehead was written a name of a mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of earth's abominations. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. It says here at the very beginning here, arrayed in purple and in scarlet, gold, jewels, pearls, golden cup. This false religion, which is supported by the Antichrist and his kingdom, will become very great riches. It'll have great riches, and it'll parade itself in its wealth like a harlot, as it says. And it will lure people to itself by its wealth. It'll be shiny, glimmerous, and so people will be attracted to all the wealth. It says even a golden cup full of abominations. Babylon will be the center of false religion, will be drunk with idolatry, drunk with all of its sin, and it will have no shame at all. And it mentions on her forehead there was a name. And in those days, back in Rome, it was required of a prostitute to have a headband that identified her as that. You can see this similarity in Jeremiah 3, verse 3. And the name is Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and earth's abominations. So remember, Babylon is an actual place as well as the center of this false religious system. It's like Wall Street. It's a real location, but it's also the term used for that, for the business world. So Babylon is where people, if you look in history, began to turn away from God. Tower of Babel. You look throughout history and all the way to the very end. This has always been a center of idolatry and turning against God. And so it will be the same at the end as well. Then verses 6 through 8 talks about the mystery of the woman. It says, when I saw her, I marveled greatly. But the angel said to me, why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns that carries her. The beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. And the dwellers of the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will marvel to see the beast, because it was and is not and is to come. So John himself marvels, and the angel, he's confused. He doesn't completely understand what he's looking at. So the angel says, don't worry, I'll explain. Which to me, when I first read this, was a little encouraging. Even John has trouble with the understanding the visions of Revelation. But the angel says, I will tell you the mystery of the woman and the beast. In other words, he's going to give a detailed explanation of the woman, which is, of course, false religion, and of the beast, which is, of course, the Antichrist and his kingdom. And it describes this beast as the one who was, is not, and is about to rise and go to destruction. Okay, of course, this sounds very confusing, but this is what I believe it is saying. If you remember, in chapter 13, it says that the beast will rise out of the sea or out of the abyss, and it's talking about an evil spirit that comes from the abyss or the bottomless pit to possess the Antichrist and to control him. It also says in chapter 13 that the beast will appear or seem to die and then will rise up and live. So therefore, you could say that the beast was alive before this happens, is not alive when he suffers this mortal wound, and then is about to rise from the bottomless pit where the demon comes to possess him, and then eventually he goes to destruction, because at the end of the tribulation, Jesus will cast him into the lake of fire. That's also why it says in chapter 13 that it seemed to have a mortal wound that was healed. The body rises up, but it's a demonic spirit that's now in control, not the human spirit that died. So the dwellers of the earth will marvel to see this, obviously, because it'll appear that he rose from the dead, and so his followers will be amazed. Then in verses 9 through 12, continues the explanation. Says, this calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. They are also 7 kings, 5 of whom have fallen. 1 is, the other has not yet come. And when he does come, he must remain only a little while. As for the beast that was and is not, it is an 8th, but it belongs to the 7, and it goes to destruction. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour, together with the beast. So again, it's calling your attention. This calls for a mind of wisdom. It says, pay close attention to understand the meaning of the description of this beast. If you remember in the description, it talks about 7 mountains or hills. Again, if you remember from before when we described this in chapter 13, it's talking about Rome, the 7 hills of Rome, and the 7 evil kings throughout biblical history. And they are also 7 kings. If you remember, we looked at this already when we were going through chapter 13. The 7 heads represent the 7 evil kingdoms in the Bible. And this description of the beast, remember, it's being given to John in the 1st century. So from 1st century perspective, the 5 kingdoms that have already come and fallen are Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, and Greece. By the 1st century, those have come and have fallen. The one that is Rome. And then the one that is yet to come is the restored Roman Empire in the tribulation. So when you count all those up, that's 7. It equals the 7 heads of the beast. It says the beast that was and is not, it is an 8th. The human Antichrist will be the 7th. The demon who controls the body of the dead Antichrist will be the 8th, but that 8th is part of the 7th kingdom, the restored Roman Empire. And then again it says it has 10 horns. Again, the 10 horns are the 10 kings of this restored Roman Empire. There's this coalition on the earth at that time. And it says that they have not yet received royal power, obviously because the tribulation has not taken place yet. And when it does, it mentions that it'll only be for a very short time. Compared to the ages of kingdoms and empires, 7 years, that's not much at all. It'll be just 1 hour, okay, a figure of speech for a very short time. Verses 13 and 14, these are of one mind, and they hand over their power and authority to the beast. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those with him are called chosen and faithful. They hand over their power. The 10 kings of the Antichrist kingdom, at the end, willingly let him lead them. Let the Antichrist be their leader. It says they will make war. As foolish as it is, the Antichrist and his 10 kings and leaders of the earth will actually go and make war and be ready to fight Jesus when he comes at the end of the Battle of Armageddon to fight them. But of course, Jesus will make very short work of them. And it says those with him returning, when Christ comes back to this earth, we will come with him. We are his army. We are returning with him. We're not going to be able to fight because he doesn't need us. But we will at least get to return and see it take place. And then the end here, burned with fire. Verses 15 through 18. And the angel said to me, the waters that you saw where the prostitute is seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages. And the 10 horns that you saw, they and the beast will hate the prostitute. They will make war. They will make her desolate and naked and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose by being of one mind and handing over their royal power to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. And the woman that you saw is the great city that has dominion over the kings of the earth. So the waters you saw, remember I just mentioned before, these are the nations of the earth. It mentions that, all the peoples, languages, and nations. The beast, it says, will hate the prostitute. At some point, which I believe is the midpoint of the tribulation, the Antichrist and his kingdom will turn against this irreligious establishment, and he will replace it with himself as the God who should be worshipped. And he will only accept worship to himself. It says he will devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. The Antichrist and his government will become so powerful that they will absolutely destroy the center or destroy this false religion in order to replace it with himself. But it mentions, you see, to carry out his purpose, God is completely in control at this time. Everything that is happening is perfectly according to God's plan. Even he uses his enemies to accomplish his will. It says, the woman that you saw, the great prostitute is the city of Babylon. The city of Babylon is the great prostitute. They're one and the same. Babylon and the great prostitute. They're one and the same, but they're just different aspects of this false religious empire. The prostitute is a picture of spiritual immorality, which is idolatry. And Babylon tells us where it is located and its connection to Babylon in the past and Babel in the past. So that concludes chapter 17, which is a description of the great prostitute, or Babylon, who rides for a time the support of the beast, or the Antichrist kingdom, which is pictured with the 7 heads and the 10 horns